on, you bastard!
Brought to you by supporters who probably have better taste than this schmuck.
Yeah, I know. This is a list of figures in 2022, and by the time this video comes out, it'll probably be early January 2024. But you know what? No, I don't apologize. I had very good reasons to delay the video this long. First there was this, then there was this, and later there was this, and after that there was this, and between all that I was doing this, so in fairness, I had a lot on my plate. But hey, if YMS can take ages to put out his list, then I'm sure y'all can live with me doing that for a bit. 2022 was a bit of a weird year. On paper, it should have been a slam dunk. The new design team had just taken over, and as such, the sky was the limit in what they could produce. The door was open for any and all continuities, and what did they do? Not much, sadly. A lot of the releases we got seemed like the company was having issues getting a lawnmower to start. It seemed less like the legacy we all know and love these days, and more like Kingdom Plus. Beast Wars started to take a backseat as G1 came to the forefront once more. Fortunately, the G1 we did get wasn't the toon slog we were overfed with back in War for Cybertron. Prime hopped into the mix, though it definitely had some growing pains starting out. And on the Studio Series side of things, we didn't actually get a lot. It was a pretty slow release year, and while the year was ongoing, it seemed like they didn't really know what to do after the previous trilogy finished. In hindsight, I'd probably chalk it up to a lot of John Warden's decisions still being in effect. It wouldn't be until 2023 that the Dream Team's influence would fully take hold, but in retrospect, it was still a pretty good year, all things considered. Not quite as exciting as 2021, but still pretty good. We didn't get a lot of stinkers, and because of that, the worst figures of that slice of my collecting journey are a bit erratic. So today, it's finally time to look back and celebrate some of the failures of the Plastic Construct Collection tapestry. Greetings, Cybertronians, I'm DrLockdown, and although ridiculously late, today's diagnosis pertains to the top 22 worst Transformers of 2022. Since this is basically tradition at this point, most people watching are aware of how these lists function. That said, for those who are new here, this isn't an objective list. When I do these, the primary focus is cataloguing my own collecting journey, not pitting every figure that came out within the year against each other. This list is entirely my personal opinion, filled to the brim with bias. I'm not writing an academic article here, I'm talking about my least favorite toys that I received in the year 2023. And that's the next thing. It's not the figures that came out in 2023, but rather figures I received. I'm not making this video to compare the same set of figures with a billion other fans. It's a catalogue for my own collecting journey, in some cases with figures that have long since been passed on to people who prefer them. And finally, yes, the list includes third party. Some people are gonna get mad at this, claiming we need an objective marker of every officially released Transformers branded product, and these stipulations ruin it, but I don't particularly think any Transformer tuber follows this style. It's about celebrating the highs and lows of every given year that we experienced. Every collector is different, and to devalue that by insisting there needs to be an objective marker seems a bit reductive for such a diverse niche on a website built on personal originality, at least until the AI slop takes over. But go ahead, whinge in the comments how my selections are quote-unquote wrong. It only adds to the comment count and makes the algorithmic discovery stronger. Anyway, enough dawdling, let's get on with this. Well, in just a minute actually. First we have to talk about something serious. Back in November, you may recall I released my 8th anniversary special, Every War for Cybertron figure ranked. Part of this celebration involved bringing on a bunch of collaborators from a diverse range of toy reviewer niches. One of these reviewers is now in dire need of assistance. TIV is a VTuber streamer and toy reviewer, and currently they are facing persecution in their home state for the simple fact of being queer. With the rise of anti-LGBTQ laws, particularly pertaining to trans individuals, the safety of them and their partner is being threatened. Job insecurity, harassment from those around them, laws that ban gender-affirming care, issues surrounding these have become more frequent. Even with a predominantly progressive government, legislation is slowly being worn down, and things are becoming highly concerning. As such, TIV and their partner need your help. A GoFundMe will be linked in the description to raise funds for their relocation to a safer state. 6,000 United States dollars are required, and any assistance through donations or sharing around would be appreciated. As a community, we have the power to assist those in need. I hope we're able to come together in situations like these and protect our own. Sorry for taking time out of this video, this is just an important issue that needs to be brought to attention. Anyway, on with the review.
Number 22!
Legacy Bulkhead is a damn solid figure. I don't think I would consider him the best the line had to offer, especially when you start to add in the Velocitron stuff, but he's fun as Wonderful reinterpretation of the prime source material that stands above his line mates, so obviously not as good as Skyquake. The same great articulation we've come to know and love with this line. A killer alt mode that's quintessentially bulkhead. Awesome weapon storage, what more could you ask for? Well, a pristine paint layout would be nice, and Wrecker's Collection bulkhead seems to deliver on that front. Unfortunately, this seems to be a monkey's paw type situation, because everything else got thrown out the f***ing window. Yes, the camo deco is fantastic, but it's juxtaposed with this sickly shade of flat green that shits on the legacy the original release left behind, no pun intended. The joints feel about as sickly as the plastic as well. Somehow they're both far looser and much more rickety. Don't know how that's possible, but here we are. The plastic density has taken a nosedive. The original was known for being a hefty beast, whereas this feels like a mere facade. In a literal sense, not a conceptual one. And worst of all, the best thing about the original, its solidity has been completely lost. The build quality on this thing is shocking. There aren't any QC issues, but due to the way this is built, it genuinely feels like a knockoff. And I don't mean that as a compliment. It feels like I've been duped into buying a low-grade bootleg, and the real Wrecker's bulkhead is elsewhere and prohibitively expensive. Honestly, I don't know what's going on with the Wrecker's line. One of my mate's spindles keeps falling to pieces, and not purposefully like a fossilizer is supposed to. Meanwhile, another mate's Springer has a transformation joint in the calf, so it can't transform into either mode. So far, I haven't heard of any issues with Twin Twist, but someone will probably have something to say in the comments at this rate. It's real disappointing. I love the original and wanted to experience the mold again with an Age of Extinction flair. Apparently that was too much to ask though, because Amazon keeps skimming the budget from the plastic and quality control department to fund Jeff Bezos' new union busting squad. As such, off to the sales pile he goes. Keeping the accessories though.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Number 21.
Poor Nightbird, she just cannot catch a break. When Takara Legends released her RT retool way back in 2015, it was a nice addition to the G1 tapestry. Since then, however, they just haven't been able to get it right. Siege stank, Rise of the Beasts was deeply flawed, and Masterpiece... oh god, Masterpiece. See, the Legends one works because it was based on an already good mold, so a simple palette swap was something to be excited for. Masterpiece RC is shithouse though. It basically does an Earthrise conversion, only with extra panels to smooth things out. It's a shell former in the worst sense, foregoing the creative way that uses parts uniquely. I just do not get the love for this figure. Sure, the articulation is pretty good, but that's virtually every Masterpiece figure ever. You also need decent sculpt work and mass usage to make said sculpting feel expressive. Aside from the damn good head sculpt, which, let's be real, every Nightbird head sculpt ever has been damn good, there's not a lot here that gets you excited. That is, unless you want to do unspeakable things to your toys, because apparently they retooled the R section to be more curvaceous? Why? This is a plastic toy. Why are you trying to make this horny? And ultimately, it's another fembot who lazily puts all the engineering into the back. Because heaven forbid we damage the carefully sculpted female form. I'm so glad Legacy has moved away from this farcical engineering style. Sacrificing engineering so you can get your rocks off to a female robot has always been ridiculous. And I'm glad we're moving towards good toys that just happen to be female. Please do better, Takara. Please do better.
Number 20.
Let's be real, War for Cybertron was G1. Sure, it was G1 through several filters, but it was rare for it to step outside of that comfort zone, at least until Kingdom showed up. So after effectively 4 years of nothing but the stuff, 8 if you count the trilogy before it, yeah, there's gonna be an adjustment period. And that adjustment period hit Legacy hard. You can tell this wasn't a piece derived from laziness. You can tell that whoever worked on this, they tried damn hard to balance the two aesthetics, and get the character across in the Legacy style without losing that precious prime identity. But regardless of intent, the result is the same. It's a figure that is just undercooked. The engineering, the sculpting, all of it. It needed more refining, but because they were still figuring things out, this figure is the refining process. You compare this to how Skyquake and Dreadwing were handled, or how the upcoming animated bots were done, and you can see this was a jumping off point. Legacy doesn't exhibit growing pains, she is the growing pains. Oh well, at least the mold saw new life as femboy Road Rocket and lesbian Archer Flame War. Seriously, this mold does insanely well as everyone but RC. Well, unless you count the Toxitron collection with it pissing its pants.
I can't talk right now. I'm making piss. You got the time.
It's just a shame that the OG was the one that turned out so poorly done, especially for such a beloved character.
Number 19.
I quite like Q Transformers. They're just simple, fun toys, addicting to collect and endlessly adorable. One thing that ties them all together is that no matter what you pick, they'll always have that premium feel to them. As part of a licensed vehicle line, of course Takara is going to ensure they're done to the best ability they can be. Well, except for this one. Remember how all the other Q figures had this lovely metallic fleck to them? Can't do that here because toon accuracy. You get stuck with this dull shade of mustard that feels like it's on the cusp of being translucent. It doesn't come across on camera, but this almost looks like a KO. Remember all the small flourishes each figure got with all the minor details picked out? Can't do that here because toon accuracy. Couldn't even paint the wheel rims for f***'s sake. And the robot mode. Christ, this is ugly. You end up with even less paint on show. And the new paint you do get is this dull and boring grey. That's also the chalky chippable type. And it's also really messy. Not as messy as the Autobot symbol though, I genuinely struggle telling what I'm looking at here. And because they've made the head much bigger than the original, now they've had to hollow it out in a move that would give Kingdom Hot Rod a run for his money. Overall, it's just a shithouse figure, and easily the least favourite Q release I own. Dunno if this is the worst one here, but it's the worst one I've come across in my admittedly small lineup. I may have gotten it for dirt cheap, but I still feel ripped off.
Number 18.
Combiner Wars Shockwave is a very hard act to follow up. There's just a simple brilliance of how he does everything. Like the entire effort that should have been spread across the Combiner Wars line was instead concentrated into a single figure. You literally could have reissued this release in Legacy and no one would have batted an eye. Unfortunately, Legacy isn't known for doing that. Every time it would make sense to just copy the original system but give it a more modern finish, they instead change things just for the sake of changing things. Sometimes that can result in a pretty good, albeit slightly inferior, release in comparison to the original. Not so here. Legacy Shockwave is a piss stain on the core class, not quite reaching Hot Rod levels, but getting pretty close. Instead of the swish space gun that doubles as a spaceship, now you have a clunky carrier with aimless mechanical detail and an absolutely nothing bridge. It takes the wonder of the Siege version and sucks any joy out of it, leaving a corporate mandated not a gun mode. And the robot mode continues the blandness. There's no highlights, no pizzazz. Where's the lovely transparent pink from earlier? Why is he even less sturdy than the original? And why does he come with a radar dish? This accessory is borderline actually, no, it is useless. I actually had this big video planned where I pit Combiner Wars Hot Rod and Shockwave against their Legacy counterparts. Script was done and everything, but it went on hold thanks to the sheer mountain of work the War for Cybertron video required. It'll definitely be back though, because the world needs to know just how bad this fucker is. Best he works as is a character stand-in of this specific scale, and when that's the only good quality of a toy, well, that's a failure in my book.
Number 17.
Despite my hatred for Age of Extinction taking the spot of my least favourite and most despised Transformers movie, I've always loved the character design of Crosshairs. In a lineup of incomprehensible nightmares of concept art fuckery, where a certain someone forgot to tell ILM that the designs had to be made into toys, that's not hyperbole mind you, Crosshairs stood out as one of the few designs that actually did something inventive with his vehicle kibble. Probably helps that twin guns and a trench coat is one of my favourite aesthetic combos. Unfortunately, when slammed with the budget cuts of the early 2010s, this design had no hope in hell of getting a good toy. Aside from the surprisingly fun Legends outing, none of them really met the standard I wanted for the character. Crossy Roadie Boy seemed to finally be getting his second chance in Studio Series with a brand new outing built from the ground up. My hype was immense leading up to release, perhaps more than any of the other Bayverse figures releasing around the same time. All that, only to get this as an end result. The vehicle mode is alright I suppose, and I like that it has pinned wheels, but let's face it, the vast majority of Studio Series figures also have killer vehicle modes. This doesn't make him any special, and the robot mode, the primary reason for wanting him in the first place, is just abysmal. Between the severely lacking paintwork and kibble management that somehow ends up worse than the original toy, this is a robot mode that causes me psychological damage. This might have been one of my most anticipated figures of the year, and for it to end up like this, not even trying to get the design to work, shit hurts, man. Guess I'll have to hope and pray some third-party company somewhere makes their own version. But I really shouldn't have to. Studio Series has been great over the years, with honestly minimal stinkers. It's just a shame one of those stinkers was a design I hold so dearly.
Number 16.
Damn, Bayverse Studio Series just couldn't catch a break this year, could it? Between winding down in preparation for Rise of the Beasts and releasing such stinkers, it wasn't a good year to be a Bayverse fan. Perhaps the shift is best exemplified with Revenge of the Fallen Sideswipe, because the dichotomy between these two is kinda absurd. The Dark of the Moon original was a true hidden gem of the line, and genuinely one of my favourite deluxes of all time. It's got a wonderful blend of swish silver alt mode, clever transformation, interesting use of parts forming, and endlessly posable robot mode. It's a figure you wouldn't expect them to go so hard on, and yet somehow they do. For Revenge of the Fallen, take all that ingenuity and throw it out the window. All the cool seating detail gets lost with the new hood, so the clever transformation doesn't make sense anymore. Not that the transformation is clever anymore now that they just shove everything into the backpack. Gone is the incredibly flush canopy flip. Now he's got more jank hanging off the back than a canopy cosplayer. It's also weirdly fiddly now. Might just be my copy, but nothing wants to hold together, and the joints feel all rickety. None of this was an issue on the OG, everything felt buttery smooth. In all honesty, this might be one of the biggest downgrades Transformers has seen in recent memory, at least from my eyes. With other releases, I can see arguments on which is better, and even if I don't agree, I can empathize. Not here, not with this. It's really tragic that this and Crosshairs were some of the last big Bayverse releases, as Studio Series just doesn't have room for anything now between Rise of the Beasts, Gamer Edition, and soon-to-be 1 and Reactivate. Potentially 2 years with minimal Bay figures, and these are the faces of that part of the franchise. Kinda hurts, not gonna lie. Oh, and this is actually my second copy, because the joints were frozen on the first and I had to return it. Bought it twice, and both were shits. That's the sign of a true stinker.
Number 15.
It's always the same, isn't it? The cycle of collaborative figures endlessly repeats itself into oblivion, with Hasbro riding all the way to the bank. A new figure's released, fans immediately forget the long history of quality because it's a property they like, then they tell everyone it's actually good this time. Then it ends up not being so. JP93 is just another shit figure in a long line of shit figures. He's really close to being good, with a genuinely great alt mode and a mostly solid transformation. He's on the cusp of being a really solid figure, but there's a couple of areas where he falls short. You've got really loose hips, so standing him is a pain in the ass. The backpack refuses to stay tabs together, so often you're left with this whole thing flopping around. The torso is completely hollow from the front, not the back mind you, where you wouldn't notice, but the front looks even worse when the backpack untabs. And worst of all, you have to actively stress the plastic on the legs to properly tab in the roof pieces. Roof pieces that are both done in clear plastic. You do see why this is an issue, right? People constantly shit on Studio Series for its use of clear plastic, but give this shit a pass? Because it's gonna be in vehicle mode forever? Is that why? And to think a bunch of people were claiming this would eventually get retooled into legacy skids. Fucking phew, thank God that wasn't the case. This thing is a travesty, and it would be far lower on this list if it wasn't for 1, the fact Megatron is way worse, and 2, I virtually got this figure for free. See, Amazon accidentally released the listings for this pack and Draculus early, only they swapped the prices around. Because of this, and because they honored the mispricing, unlike the $30 Black Zarak, I was able to get this set for $20 less than general leader price. Since I only wanted the pack for Tyrannicon anyway, I pretty much got this figure for free. As such, I'm not really mad about it. I'm happy with Tyrannicon easily being the best of the 3 T-Rex-alikes, so ultimately, I'm not mad in the slightest. But this figure is still shit. It's still one the fandom gives way too much of a pass on concept alone. Just like the second pack they put out recently. Really living up to his name, Asic Park indeed. Park me dead.
Number 14.
2021. Earthrise Cliffjumper takes a dishonorable mention placement on the worst of 2020 list. 2022. Buzzworthy Worlds Collide Bumblebee takes the 10th spot on the worst of 2021 list. So obviously, it should be no surprise that some version of Cliffjumper makes it onto the 2022 list. This time, however, he's joined by his arachnoid friend, because the Creatures Collide box set was under the impression Scorponok was actually good, as opposed to, you know, the worst beast former in Kingdom. Now, there are a few reasons as to why these two aren't lower on the list. Goldbug's Beetle mode is actually rad, especially with the gorgeous color scheme. Also, massive kudos to making the clear parts inserts. This is something Hasbro should do more often, and I'm saddened it's wasted on a figure like this. The rubber mode is also pretty good. I'm still not a fan of the bloated car hood chest, and I really don't get how anyone can call this better than the masterpiece, but it looks rad in the metallic gold. The head sculpt is also amazing, blows the other two out of the water. Hell, even Scorponok has a sweet sexy color scheme. I'm thinking I may actually sell the original off instead of the Buzzworthy version. But here's the thing, there's still the Cliffjumper and Scorponok molds. Goldbug still gets ruined by the application of useless parts forming derived from warped priorities, a practice that has fortunately vanished in today's paradigm, aside from some annoying outliers. And Scorponok, well, he's Scorponok. The proportions and transformation are agonizing. I'd appreciate the ambition the designers brought to the table if this thing wasn't absolute garbage. So yeah, off to the sales pile these went. Or at least Goldbug anyway. I actually ended up selling it to the same guy who bought Worlds Collide B last year, so at least someone will appreciate them more than I have. In the meantime, please stop re-releasing Scorponok. The audacity they have to push this mold again when nobody liked it, while Rhinox and Trax barely get anything after the fandom backlash. For shame. Come on, Hasbro. I don't want to have to deal with this shit anymore.
Number 13.
The Cybertronian line of Studio Series Bumblebee movie figures was perhaps one of the most creative endeavors Studio Series has ever seen. Without the existence of any alternate modes for most of these fellows, the designers were able to go absolutely nuts with some of these conversions. Brawn, Ratchet, Ironhide, the Seekers, RC. They took a design that was honestly haunting on screen and turned it into the absolute king of RC figures. Sorry, SS86 RC, you never stood a chance.
Space Jam DVD, Space Jam DVD, Space Jam DVD, Space Jam DVD.
So, with all that said, what the f happened here? No, seriously, who the hell thought a Cybertronian pancake was a good idea? Oh, but it's the Green Goblin's glider. No, it f***ing ain't. This is a bunch of body parts crumpled up into a thing. No amount of G.I. Joe homages is going to save this from looking like scrap metal. Somehow, they managed to make an alt mode worse than the Siege version. How do you even do that? But an alt mode alone isn't enough to get him so high on this list. Oh no. The robot mode is an incredibly clunky experience as well. He ends up with double jointed knees, but somehow they don't go further than 90, so handling them becomes annoying more than anything. The waist swivel is behind the loincloth, meaning you can't even make use of it because it breaks up the sculpt. He's got painted over light piping, so just when you start getting excited, oh, damn. And he can't even fit the bloody cassettes. This thing doesn't close properly or the back gets pushed out. Soundwave should be getting his back blown out by Megatron on a Friday night, not from incorporating basic functionality most Soundwaves should have these days. Not even the face sculpt can save him. It just looks like someone making a sad-facing Gary's mod. And that's what this figure is overall. It's a bunch of body parts crumpled up to force out the end result, and ultimately, it's just sad. They said it could be anything, so he became
Number 12.
What happened here? What the f happened here? Kingdom brought back Legend Scale with a bang, going balls to the walls with its clever new takes on old classics. All they had to do was do that again with Hot Rod, and yet we ended up with this instead. All the decisions made with this figure are baffling. The kibble management, the mechanical detail, the awful paint, the weapon usage, the inappropriate hollowness that makes Soundwave look decent in comparison. This whole thing just makes me ask, why? Genuinely, this doesn't feel like Hot Rod or Rodimus. It's so far removed from the original that it doesn't even feel like a lifeless husk. It just feels like something different, something off-putting, something downright creepy. All this and an opportunistic Combiner Wars redeco was able to capture his essence better. That's kinda pathetic. But I don't want to get too deep into it, as I have a full review fully scripted and planned for eventual release in a marathon. It keeps getting pushed back due to various circumstances, but I'll get around to it eventually. In the meantime though, this figure sucks, and it's really annoying that this is the only Hot Rod they'll likely give us at this scale.
Boo! Number 11.
Yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this one sucks. Let's just say I tried to open it and things didn't go so well. Moving on!
Number 10.
I still don't get the love for this thing. Even after dragging him through the mud in my War for Cybertron coverage, I had tons of comments and private messages saying I was too harsh on the thing. Bitch, please, it's basically Sideswipe all over again. They took one of the coolest, most inventive deluxes of the line and they basically regurgitated it out with all of its good qualities removed. Smooth transformation? Gone. Awesome bestial detail? Gone. Wonderful paintwork? Gone. Being able to stand well? Gone. Like, I'm not the only one who thinks a figure being able to stand well is the bare minimum, right? That should be the first priority. I guess Airazor is just never going to get a retool that elevates her to new heights, because it seems like every remake is actively trying to be worse. Skywarp was alright, but slightly less interesting. And Pterosaur is, well, Pterosaur. They then copy the transformation from the ground up for Studio Series and somehow sapped all the life out of it. Why do I even have this thing? And why do I even have this thing? Why is it the original Beast Wars toy is superior in every way? This is just pathetic. They had one shot and they blew it. Don't know why Pterosaur even had to be a retool anyway. Both characters are insanely popular. There was virtually no reason to do this, and yet here we are. I guess there's nothing to say except classic John War.
Number 9.
When I re-reviewed Last Night Reveal the Shield Optimus Prime, there was one consistent comment I got in response. Get the Fireburst version. Over and over again, that's what everyone said. Usually I pay these comments no mind, but I figured, what the hell, I wanted a copy as a kid anyway, so why not? And you know what? This thing actually rules. It's super stylish, turning the solar panels into what can only be described as burning justice! Both modes on this thing look absolutely stellar, and although he may not be a list contender in terms of best figures, he's a damn good one. So, why do I bring this up? Well, it's because this was my second copy. My first attempt wasn't so fortunate. This here is a bootleg. Straight up a worse quality KO. Listed as the genuine article, intended to dupe unsuspecting buyers, including myself. It didn't occur to me that this might be a bootleg until after I purchased it. And even if it was a KO, that doesn't necessarily mean it would be bad. I got Shockwave at the same time, and the package made it clear it wasn't official. Yet it might as well be. Aside from some different paint on the head, it's basically solid as the regular version in every other aspect. No, the reason this figure is on this list is because it's trash. The build on this thing is atrocious, with wibbly joints, brittle plastic, and sloppy paintwork all around. You know when third-party bros try to call knockoffs trash and all that? Well, this is the kind of figure they're thinking they're all like. This is the nightmare KO that Hasbro elitists warn you about. Again, I don't hate this because it's a KO. Shockwave says hi, I really like Shockwave. I hate this because it's a piece of shit. One so bad I don't even feel comfortable selling it off. I feel like even if I put a clear and truthful description on the nature of this thing, I'd still be lying to the buyer. I don't want to catch that heat. I don't want to give the buyer dick cancer.
Number 8.
Look, I'll be the first to admit IDW designs are difficult to do. The stylization isn't something the faint of heart can take a crack at. The transformations are typically well laid out due to the designers being fans of the franchise and always thinking forward with how these figures can work. But the sculpt work has to be 100% on point, lest the physical versions fall flat on their face. Velocitron Blur doesn't just fall flat on his face, he face plants into the ground so hard it forms a fissure deeper than the Mariner's Trench. I honestly didn't think you could make a version of this mold worse than the original Studio Series 86 release, but here we are. From a distance, the alt mode looks solid enough, but get closer and that illusion shatters. The grey uses that awful chalk-style paint that looks extremely cheap and scratches off incredibly easily. He's basically got no wheels now, which would be fine for a hover car, but when you've got literal molded wheels, it just ends up feeling insulting. Skipping wheels on a tiny Legion class figure is one thing, but we're not doing this. This is a deluxe. If the alt mode is going to be this ham-fisted into the G1 tooling, maybe alter the alt mode to fit the design better. Although doing that wouldn't have saved the rest of the figure. The transformation feels even more icky than the original thanks to the wobbliness of the plastic. Likely a result of the mold degradation. Degradation happens to all figures, but when you've got a solid transformation, you often don't notice. On a shitty transformation like this, it becomes infinitely worse. Again, how do you f up a transformation you perfected half a decade ago? And the robot mode, oh god, I'm going to hurl. On practically every point but the legs, I'm getting aesthetic whiplash from the lack of cohesion between the IDW and G1 parts. It's like Kingdom Magnus's alt mode, only somehow worse. How the f is that possible? With how heavy the wrist pylons are, it's only a matter of time before these break down the joints and start flopping all over the place, because they still haven't figured out they need to place proper locking tabs on the backs of the sleeves. And that head sculpt, at least until the point I'm writing this segment, it's the worst Hasbro has done all year. The always holding in a fart look combined with the glazed over eyes make him look like a corpse. Not that the muted color palette is helping. I'm not one who complains about lack of accuracy, but aren't IDW 1.0 designs supposed to be vibrant? This toy has completely missed the mark, and I can't bear to have this piece of shit in my collection anymore. I'm writing this segment in August of 2022, although I'm recording it in February 2024. And back then, I couldn't bear to have this piece of shit in my collection anymore. And as soon as it was filmed, that shit went straight to Marketplace, only to be sold to Diamond Bolts. I'm really glad Hasbro learned from this mistake with their future outings, because this was just an insult to IDW. Hell, they already did things right multiple times before in Thrilling 30. Blur had no excuse, so good riddance.
Number 7.
To many, Starsaber is the greatest HasLab Hasbro has ever done, Transformers or otherwise. It represents the culmination of their transition away from Western G1 oversaturation, and the jump into true continuity diversity. It's a release unshackled by price point, providing endless play value and posing options. Mentions. I do not feel this way. I do like him, but I feel he's a bit underwhelming for potentially the most hyped HasLab the franchise has ever seen. He's basically the MP with a few issues rectified, and that's it. 7 years on, it feels like a lot more should have been done, aside from just Victory Leo. Still, he's by no means a bad figure, and this listing isn't about him. No, it's about the figures he was unfortunately packed with. Guys, why did you pack these two f***ers in again? You do realize these are the most hated Micromasters off the bunch, right? Sure, the Astro Squad might be worse, but given their poor stock, nobody actually bought those two. These two were what probably single-handedly killed any and all hype in the size class. Overstocked to oblivion and underdeveloped to an extreme level. And this is the stretch goal for your mega projects? Sure, the build quality is fixed from the OGs, but that's balanced out with the lackluster paint now. I get that it's toon accurate, but it's just so boring. I'm glad this eventually led to the genuinely good Peepo and Bota, but it still doesn't change the fact that these two stink. They were bad then, they're still bad now, and they will continue to be bad however many times Hasbro decides to reissue them in the future, which is hopefully never.
Number 6.
The prospect of Bayverse core class figures has always been one that had me hyped. Given the old Legion Legends were my primary collecting source as a kid, being able to get these characters again with better engineering at that size would be amazing. So, why is it they somehow made a figure that's worse than the previous 3 attempts? No, seriously, they already got this right thrice over, and one attempt wasn't even that long ago. Hell, it's on store shelves at the time of writing this, which is February 2024, not way back in 2022. Why is this f***er such a downgrade? Why are the legs so stumpy? The torso so wibbly, the arms so spindly, the articulation so lacking? Even the Legion figures look more dynamic. I can't even get invested in the color scheme because it's just so dull. A gaudy pink Decepticon car should be right up my alley, but instead it's all muted and boring. I tell you, I am so glad I'm not a completionist anymore. Old me would have pushed through and gotten Bumblebee after this, but not after Zeta. I just can't bring myself to. It's just too shit. Now we gotta wait until, what, Mohawk for the next fix of Bayverse core class goodness? Talk about a missed opportunity.
Number 5.
Studio Series 86 Grimlock was, and is, a fantastic figure, but obviously there were issues with his included partner. There's a reason everyone hates this thing, a good reason mind you. Why would you include something this awful and this useless when the core figure is already completely worth the price of admission? Seriously, they've sold this figure on his own since, and everybody agrees the value is there. Why would you actively take less profit on this? Of course, Hasbro eventually realized their mistake and rectified this with a proper core class outing. Wasn't quite as good as the old Titan Return version, but for many, it did the job. Unfortunately, some were far too impatient to wait for the official version. In its absence, a truly heinous release emerged. DNA Design typically makes pretty good upgrade kits. In recent years, they've come under flack for packing in a bunch of useless shit, but by and large, what they make is high quality. Their wheelie is not one of those instances. It's just an absolute shit show on all fronts, with a vehicle mode that both looks ugly and doesn't hold together, joints that love to fall to bits, and a robot mode that completely misses the point of the design. If the official is core class, then this is demon core class. Only DNA has accidentally performed the crowbar experiment and killed everyone nearby. It didn't have to be this bad. The rest of the set is lovely, especially the neck piece. This is what I always wanted Grimlock to look like. They've even done legend scale bots after this, so they have the talent. It's just, this wasn't just a swing and a miss. It was a swing and a fall down a stairwell. This isn't a wheelie, this is a motorcycle crash. It's an absolute shit show, and between this and the non-transforming, nay-naying pack-in, I think I might actually prefer the Action Master, because at least it doesn't look as hideous.
Number 4.
I don't get this figure. With other collaborative outings, sure, I can kind of understand why they're so shit. They're under restrictions with the vehicle modes and designs, and they may even have a shorter turnaround on design time. Just guessing, mind you, but even if I don't agree with the reasoning, I can understand it. G.I. Joe Megatron doesn't make any sense. Both properties are Hasbro's, so changing the design is very much on the cards. Both properties are Hasbro's, so this thing shouldn't be overpriced. Both properties are Hasbro's, so there's nothing stopping them from giving the Transformers design team free reign on the design. Except they didn't. They shunted it off to the G.I. Joe team instead, which gave us probably one of the worst figures in this line up to that point. And it only got worse, mind you. I handled Bumblebee for 2 seconds while filming parts of the WFC video with someone else's collection, and 2 seconds was all it took to realize I dodged a bullets. And Soundwave? Well, Joe fans are gaslighting everyone into saying there's no parts forming when there clearly is. What does lying to potential fans achieve? They're just gonna get angry and not get into the franchise. Why do G.I. Joe fans keep lying about their franchise? It's really not a good look. Regardless, this is yet another example of why collaborative just doesn't cut it in the grand collecting space. And ultimately, it doesn't have to, because it will sell on concept alone. Doesn't matter that it's garbage. People will buy because it's a thing they like that turns into another thing they like. You'd think after these shelf-warmed so hard, people would have wised up, but no. The next Jurassic Park one is selling out like hotcakes, while the one actually good modern collaborative figure had to be clearanced at JB Hi-Fi because no one was interested. Will he be the next Space Jam DVD? I'm sure Frankentron is decent, as it's based on the already pretty good Impactor, but he ain't good enough to pay through the nose for an import, as predictably Australia skipped him but ordered 5 billion Soundwaves. Maybe the Turtles one will be good, but I won't be holding my breath. And that's all of them, right? I'm sure I've acknowledged all the other collaborative figures that are worth mentioning in the year 2024. Wait, sorry, wrong background. There we go. It's so representative of the current media space, with franchises endlessly regurgitated, without realizing what made the original so special. You can have all the ingredients for a winner, but without the right recipe, it'll just fall flat. Not that it matters, as people will still buy that shit anyway.
Number 3.
Authentics continues to
Number 2.
In 2021's worst list, I made the grave error of not including Robot Paradise Frenzy on the list. When I made that video, I hadn't spent enough time with it, and it wasn't until I'd properly sat down and messed with it further that I realized just how awful the figure was. I will not be making the same mistake this year, or last year, or 2 years ago at this point. Yeah, this video took a while to make. But this time, we're stuck with something even more heinous. Not only do we have to deal with one dog shit cassette, we have to deal with 3 of them. Rumble is just as bad as Frenzy, minus the fact the colors are better. The lush blue is awesome, but it's still got the wonky proportions with the arms, the thin and wispy paint on the shins that will definitely chip over time, and the engineering so bad that many copies require disassembly to fix it. Seriously, the masterpiece is just better. Hell, the SS86 version is better than this shit. I don't care that the engineering is technically more accurate to the G1 toy. When the tape doesn't hold together, you done f***ed it up. Meanwhile, while Ravage holds together in tape mode better, it looks absolute trash. No cohesion at all. Legitimately, Siege does this better. And somehow, Cougar mode is even worse. Close to flat as a pancake with more articulation on the back legs than the front. Like, what the f***? I get that Ravage is difficult to do, but Masterpiece already did this well. Hell, I'd argue Siege did Ravage better than this garbage. Give me the Chonk Man any day. And Laserbeak. How the f*** do you screw up Laserbeak? Another shit and mismatched cassette form leads into a terrifying transformation as you try not to scratch the chalky grey paint. And the Condor mode does alright with its increased wing articulation, but then they give the head nothing? This isn't a Micromaster budget we're dealing with. This set costs $100, and not only does the head not turn, but there's no opening beak either! The old Masterpiece came out a decade ago, so I can kind of cut it some slack, but this is 2022! 9 years on, and you can't include the most simple joint there? Maybe you'd have the budget if you didn't waste it all on useless die-cast. Was anyone asking for these to be die-cast? This isn't premium, this is just hubris. Because die-cast is always better, right? I like die-cast, don't get me wrong, but here, why? And to top it all off, there's still the frustration that these aren't compatible with any of the other cassette sizes. No other third-party company does this. Robot Paradise, or more like Fans Toys, has made it so that Acoustic Wave can only use the cassettes compatible with him. Leave it to Fans Toys to be the pettiest company in third-party history, demolishing anything Zeta has done. Hands down, these are the worst cassettes I've ever handled. Even the Generation 1 versions are better toys than these. All they have going for them is accuracy and scale, and when those are the only draws a toy has, you done f***ed it up. But of course, these weren't the only toys that done f***ed it up this year. In fact, there were enough to the point where not all would fit on this list. As such, let's take a look at 2 of our dishonorable mentions, or I guess 3. Select's Lift Ticket and Breaker are molds that I really dislike. Sure, Lift Ticket is probably the best deco this mold has ever seen, but that doesn't change the fact that these are still the Hoist molds. I've never been a fan of this, and unfortunately I've become stuck with them due to my Diaclone completionism disease. Now I know how G1 fans feel, needing to complete their lineups. Yeesh. niche. As for the other one, well, that would have to be SS86 Perceptor. I don't know, he just feels so dull and boring, especially compared to his Titan's Return predecessor, even more so when compared to the Reveal the Shield version. Fortunately, this would be the last truly dull SS86 release, as 2023 would shift things into second gear, or more so 7th gear at this rate, and the mold would even finally get its glow up with Magnificus. But as far as the original is concerned, it's just a nothing deluxe. But the number one spot is far from a nothing release. It's easily one of the most significant releases in my collecting journey, and I think you can all guess what it is. As if it could be anything else. This is the figure that made me lose my love with third-party legends. It had been on the decline for a while, but this is what truly cemented my jumping off point. I still collect in this niche to this day, but it's just not a priority anymore. Superatron Mini really threw open the doors on everything frustrating this niche was devolving into. But even beyond that, it's just a dog shit figure in every sense of the word. Accuracy for the sake of accuracy without actually succeeding. Garbage materials, heinous engineering, awful sculpts, abysmal stability, non-existent hardware, extreme issues with longevity. Seriously, since I made this review, it's started to break apart even more. But I'm not going back to film it again. I can't. I won't. This figure is so heinous that if I can avoid it, I'm going to make sure I never transform this thing again. I can't sell the because its reputation has been tarnished, to the point where it's been shoved off into flea markets at record low prices, or given away for the price of a burger. I'm stuck with it, but I'm not touching the thing again. It's easily the worst combiner I've ever handled, hands down. You'd legitimately be better off getting a G1 combiner, because at least they have fun factor and stability. What good comes from this figure? What purpose in your collection would it serve? New Age is absolutely doing one down the line, and Magic Square might, after their apparent Raiden project. It's useless, garbage, and shows the trajectory this niche is going down all too well. I hope third-party Legends manages to avoid the same pitfalls Masterpiece alikes fell into, but even if it does, this figure changed me, and most certainly for the worse. And there we have it, the most unfashionably late 2022 list this fandom has to offer. Now that this is all done, hopefully I can sell some of these bastards off and never have to think about them again. Looking back, 2021 was probably the last point where we got some true stinkers on the official front. Of course, at the time of writing, the list videos for the next year aren't out yet, but 2023 didn't hit the same lows that 2022 did. As such, I'm glad that I was finally able to get this junk off my chest. Bad toys deserve to be remembered, primarily so that you can reflect on the present and realize we actually have it pretty good. But as always, fandom public consciousness is a conversation, so drop your thoughts on 2022's worst Transformers below. Do you agree, or are some of these figures secretly brilliant? What was your least favorite figure? Should I have bothered doing these so late, or was there no point? Speaking of, the other lists are coming, but they're going to be spaced out between regular reviews, so I can cover stuff in between. No more personal kerfuffles going on, so it should be far easier to get the remaining 3 videos finished promptly. But until then, remember, there's a context for everything. Till next time!